All right, so welcome back to another episode of Finding Your Way with Lori and Tonya. We are super excited you're here. If you're a first-time listener, listen, we wholeheartedly believe that you have found us for a reason. There is something in today's episode for you. And if you're a return listener, thank you for coming back. Thank you for listening to us. And we ask that you share this podcast or any of our podcasts that resonates with you and you think may resonate with somebody else. You know, our soul mission is to share with people information, topics, conversations that we wish had been shared with us this freely and easily when we started our journey toward living a better life. So that's what it's all about. And even better, today we're going to talk about genuine relationships, genuine connections. It's interesting because Lori was at a conference and heard some things that made her think, and so we were talking about it earlier and I thought, all right, I can see where that's coming from, but we kind of know a little different, right?
Yeah. So this guy was a keynote speaker at a conference I was at, and he said this, and I sat there and thought on it a little bit. I don't know, there's some truth to that. There's some truth to what he's saying. So he was saying, everything ends up being about relationships. It's all about relationships and building relationships. And he said there's 4 components to building a relationship. There's duration, proximity, frequency, and intensity. And I sat there and thought about it, and I was like, okay, well, what he's saying is the longer you've known somebody, right, duration, the better or the more connected. The proximity, like being in the space of others, being in their space helps to build relationships. Frequency, how often you spend time in the space with others. And then intensity, how deep you go with your relationships and your connections with people. And I was sitting there and I was, how your brain starts thinking about, like, especially if you're questioning something, is that true? Like, is what he said true? And I was sitting there thinking about, but how does that explain those relationships where you meet somebody for the first time and you feel like you've known them forever? Or those relationships where, you knew somebody in the past, but you hadn't seen them in 5-10 years, and you pick up just like you've never left off, even though you hadn't talked to them in 5 or 10 years. So it made me start questioning this little formula. I think maybe he's on to something, but it's not true in all cases.
It's not the end all be all to all
Right.
relationships. And when you read it to me and you told me about it, I thought, okay, so I was trying to put it, because it was a work conference, right? So I was trying to put it in business perspective too. So I thought, okay, so if we were talking about relationships, because he said relationships in general,
yeah.
but even if you were really honing in on that business relationship, I still have clients that I've been in my industry 25 years that I can talk to today that I have not talked to in 10 years, a client that it's like no time has passed. Like we catch back up, and it's because the relationship was genuine. I didn't form that relationship simply because I needed an order from you, or I needed your business, or I'm going to try to solve your problem. Like there was a connection there that we both were honest. I think we both were intentional about connecting. I think that part of it. So even from a business perspective, I think, some of that's true, but some of it's not. It's just, I think when people connect and there is that synergy, it doesn't matter how long it's been. I mean, I was telling Lori, I've got a friend from childhood that we grew up together, like we went to every grade together. We were never good friends, but we were always in each other's space growing up. Always, we went to school together, probably kindergarten to senior year in high school. And I messaged him recently, and I'm class president. So every 5 years I plan a class reunion, fun. And so I'm planning a 30-year reunion. And I have not talked to him until 5 years ago at our 25 reunion. And prior to that had been at our 20-year reunion. And I called to ask him about his advice on some music and things. And he picked up the phone, and I went straight into high school mode. Hey, cue ball. His name's Carlos, right? And we called him cue ball and went right into that. And we just talked like it hadn't been 5 years. And I told Louie, I said, you just don't get that every day with everybody. And so I think cultivating those relationships because they were easy and you really didn't want anything from each other to begin with, other than it was just a connection.
Yeah. And I think it's sort of rare today. Maybe it's not, but it seems like a lot of times people want a relationship with you for something, for some agenda, for some reason that they need to get something from you, right? And so that sort of creates a imbalance in a relationship. If somebody wants to establish a relationship with you because they need something from you or want something from you, it just feels very different than relationships where you just click with somebody, or you want the best for somebody and you like their vibe or whatever. That's a very different relationship than one where it may be one-sided or even win-win, a two-sided relationship where you're both getting something out of it. And so I think that, I've talked to Tonya a lot about, my husband and I don't have children, and as adults, it's sometimes difficult to establish relationships with other adults when you don't have children, because a lot of your relationships, if you think about it, when you got children, a lot of relationships are established because you're doing things with children, right? You're in sports together, you're at all the competitions together, you're like always seeing each other on Saturday morning for soccer games or whatever. And so you establish, almost like getting back to his little formula, you're in proximity and you're there frequently, right? However, there are also people that I meet for the first time and I just click. Like I just click with them and it feels like we've known each other for forever and we haven't. So
Right.
it's just an interesting thing to think about. Like think about your relationships and how it came to be, and does this formula work or does it not? Or,
And I think, if I went by that formula, just like you said, I mean, there are plenty of people I am constant contact with. I'm in their space constantly. We have a lot in common because our children do some of the same activities, and they're nice enough. I like them. I enjoy conversing with them. But with his formula, there's a connection, right? I mean, because we do talk about all kinds of things because we're there for days on end, right? But there's really not, in 5 years from now, when our children aren't doing these things, when we're not in the same place, would I seek that person out? Yeah, probably not. And there's nothing good or bad to that. We just are those kind of relationships. But I do think, I mean, you think about, we've got a friend in California that we've probably laid eyes on in person 2 or 3 times, maybe.
Yeah.
And Lori and I both just connected to her. We felt like she had been our friend since we were born.
Yep.
Her energy is great. We can talk about anything. We do Zoom. We're going to meet her, at the end of the month for Girls Weekend. Like we just feel like she's ours. Like she's one of us. Like we've known her our whole lives, and we really haven't. We've probably known her 2 or 3 years and only laid eyes on her twice. So his formula doesn't add up to that relationship either. So right. I think it's interesting when you hear somebody kind of describe a formula of how something should work. And we do a lot of formulas in this podcast, right? We talk about formulas. But for Lori to bring it and kind of go, what do you think about this? Do you think this is right? I think we can't remiss the gut instinct, the heart feelings, those things forego any formula I think that you can put out there.
Yeah. And, if you really believe that we're here to grow and learn lessons and that kind of thing, like we're on a soul's journey here. And if you really believe that, then there's going to be people that come in and out of your life throughout your life. Some stick, some don't. And all of them, there's a reason for all of them. You hear that all the time. There's a reason for all the relationships. Some of them it's a blessing, some of them it's a lesson, there's different reasons people come at the right time. It might not seem like the right time to us, but if there's really a plan and you're here to learn and grow, there's going to be those people that you click with and you can't even explain why you do. And there's going to be people that you might be in proximity with for a long period of time and see them frequently that you never connect with. Like you just, the energy isn't right. You just don't, you don't feel that connection. So it just was interesting to think about.
And I think, Lori and I are in that situation where we've talked about soul tribe.
Yeah.
And, we do want to be in proximity of these people, but we also, I think that there's a lot, we need that connection. And we're looking for that. And too many times nowadays, I think that Zoom, people still aren't, in face-to-face like they used to be. I think a lot gets lost in this new generation too. I think because they meet each other on Snapchat or on Instagram, and they lose some of that natural connection. And so I think when you are talking about, that could go back to how you communicate proximity is, do you see them every day on Snapchat? Do you see them every day? Again, that's really not the soulful connection I think we are looking for when we start trying to build out that tribe of people.
Yeah. And you remember back in the day when we were doing our Monday morning messages so long ago, we did one on genuine relationships and how do you cultivate that. And I think one of our key messages when we did that little brief talk was if you want something, if you want a genuine connection, if you want that soul tribe, that soul connection and relationship, you have to be it. You have to embody it. And you have to, how are you being genuine in your relationships? How are you being authentic when you show up and interact with other people? And so that's, I guess, a good takeaway is, if you do look around, and sometimes I look around and go, it's really rare to have genuine relationships. I'm so thankful for the ones that I have. But if you want more, you have to become what you want, right? And you have to start being that and being genuine and not going into relationships wanting something and needing something. But it's really more opening yourself up to where you're genuine and you genuinely want to connect with somebody, and you just go do it. And then more of that comes to you.
Right. Just the law of attraction, right? You got to be it first before you can attract it. And that's anything. And so just some food for thought. If you're like us and you want those types of relationships and you want to cultivate that, it's very important that you be that, because you're going to attract what you are.